France just made the biggest government technology decision in modern history, and Microsoft is sweating. 2.5 million civil servants, every single ministry. One massive mandate: ditch Windows, move to Linux. And the deadline is coming faster than anyone expected. By the end of this video, you are going to understand exactly what triggered this historic decision, how Microsoft is fighting back, why this migration might actually work when dozens of others have failed, and what it means for every government watching France right now. This is not a pilot program. It is not a trial. It is a full-scale exit, and it started on April 8, 2026. France's Interministerial Directorate for Digital Affairs, known as DINAM, held an interministerial seminar alongside 3 other major national bodies: the National Cybersecurity Agency of France, the Directorate General for Enterprises, and the State Procurement Directorate. What came out of that meeting was a directive with no ambiguity attached to it. Every French ministry must formalize its own migration plan away from Windows, away from American cloud platforms, and toward open-source Linux-based systems, and submit that plan by autumn 2026. The scope is staggering. This is not just about swapping one operating system for another. The migration covers workstations, collaboration tools, antivirus software, AI platforms, databases, virtualization environments, and network infrastructure. The entire technology stack of the French state is on the table, and the budget minister, David Amiel, made the political intent crystal clear. His exact words were, "We can no longer accept that our data, our infrastructure, and our strategic decisions depend on solutions whose rules, pricing, and risks we do not control." That sentence alone tells you everything. This is not just a tech decision, it is a political statement. France has been moving in this direction for years, but something tipped the balance in early 2026. That something was geopolitical. The Trump administration's increasingly unpredictable posture toward Europe, tensions over Greenland, trade friction, and the persistent shadow of the US Cloud Act intensified fears across the continent that American tech giants could, if compelled, cut off access to critical government infrastructure. France's DINUM explicitly cited growing instability and unpredictability on the part of the Trump administration as one of the key drivers behind the decision. The US Cloud Act is particularly important here. It allows American law enforcement to compel US-based tech companies to hand over data stored anywhere in the world, including servers located on French soil. For a sovereign government, that is an unacceptable level of exposure. So France's decision is not rooted in anti-American sentiment, it is rooted in risk management. When you cannot guarantee the security and continuity of your own government's data, because a foreign law can override your jurisdiction, you have a problem that no software update can fix, and they are not alone. Germany's state of Schleswig-Holstein completed 80% of its 30,000 workstation Linux migration by early 2026, saving €15 million in annual licensing costs on a total migration investment of just €9 million. That is a one-year payback. India made similar moves last year. The digital sovereignty movement is no longer a fringe idea. It is government policy across multiple continents. Here is where skeptics usually jump in. Migrating millions of machines to Linux sounds great on paper, but what about the reality? What about the legacy applications, the institutional habits, the inevitable technical chaos? France already has the answer to that question, and it has been running quietly for nearly 2 decades. The Gendarmerie Nationale, France's national military police force, began replacing Microsoft Office, Internet Explorer, and Outlook as far back as 2005. By 2008, they were transitioning to Ubuntu Linux. They built their own customized distribution called Gendarmerie and deployed it. Today, 97% of over 103,000 workstations in the French Gendarmerie run Gendarmerie. That is not a small pilot. That is 103,000 machines in active use by law enforcement, one of the most operationally critical environments you can imagine. And the financial results were decisive. A 40% reduction in total cost of ownership and approximately €2 million saved every year in licensing fees. totaling roughly €50 million over time. Think about that for a second. A police force that handles national security, criminal investigations, and emergency response has been running entirely on Linux for 15 years, and it works. That is not a theoretical case study. That is France's own proof of concept, already proven inside France itself. Now apply those numbers to 2.5 million civil servants. Germany's Schleswig-Holstein model suggests annual savings for France could exceed €40 million once the migration is complete. Linux is just the beginning. France is not simply swapping Windows for a free operating system and calling it a day. What is being built here is a full sovereign technology stack. Every layer of government IT replaced with alternatives that France controls. Microsoft Teams and Zoom are being replaced by Visio, a domestically built, encrypted communication and video conferencing platform. The mandate sets a deadline of 2027 for the transition of all 2.5 million civil servants to Visio. SharePoint and cloud file sharing services are being replaced by Nextcloud, an open-source platform that can be hosted entirely on French government servers. This is critical. It means French government files never leave French-controlled infrastructure. The encrypted messaging platform CHAP, already deployed within government networks, continues to expand. AI platforms, databases, and virtualization tools are all part of the migration scope. And in January 2026, France had already mandated that Teams, Zoom, and WebEx would be replaced by Visio across all government offices. So the move was not sudden. It was the latest step in a deliberate, multi-year decoupling that started long before the April 8 announcement. What France is building is not just an alternative to Microsoft. It is an entire parallel infrastructure, one where every critical tool is either open source, domestically developed, or both. So how has Microsoft reacted? When TechCrunch reached a Microsoft spokesperson immediately after the April announcement, they received no comment. Officially, Microsoft said nothing, but silence is not the same as inaction. Behind the scenes, Microsoft has been pushing its sovereign cloud offering, a model where data and services are managed within a country's own jurisdiction, operated by a local partner, and theoretically insulated from US legal reach. It is Microsoft's answer to the Cloud Act concern. Trust us, but we will put the infrastructure on your soil. Microsoft has also been leaning heavily on Copilot, its AI productivity tool, as a retention strategy. The pitch to European governments has shifted from just Office and Windows to AI transformation, positioning Microsoft 365 Copilot as too valuable to walk away from, even if you have sovereignty concerns. It is a classic enterprise playbook. If the customer wants to leave, give them something new they cannot get elsewhere yet. In this case, Microsoft is betting that AI dependency will anchor governments that are already emotionally committed to digital sovereignty, but practically reluctant to rebuild everything from scratch. But France has seen this play before, and they are not buying it. The French government's response to the sovereign cloud pitch is essentially this: sovereign cloud is still someone else's cloud. The rules and the code base still belong to Microsoft, and that, fundamentally, is the problem they are trying to solve. Let us be honest about what France is actually up against, because this is genuinely hard. Approximately 30% of legacy applications used across French government ministries are still Windows dependent. These are applications that were built specifically for Windows environments, often decades ago, and may have no Linux-compatible equivalent. Migrating them requires either finding alternatives, rebuilding them from scratch, or running compatibility layers, all of which cost time and money. There is also the human factor. Civil servants who have used Windows and Microsoft Office their entire careers will need retraining. Even if Linux desktop environments have become far more intuitive, the transition period will produce real friction, help desk calls, workflow disruptions, and institutional resistance. And then there is the Munich problem. Germany's city of Munich famously migrated to Linux in 2004, only to reverse course and return to Windows in 2017 after years of user complaints and incompatibility issues. That case has haunted every government Linux migration since. France knows about Munich. That is why the Denim plan includes structural commitments designed to avoid the same outcome. Mandatory ministry roadmaps by autumn 2026, explicit executive authority behind the directive, and a realistic full completion timeline estimated around 2030, not a rushed, politics-driven deadline. The migration scope also means different ministries will move at different speeds. Defense, finance, and interior ministries managing sensitive national security data have different risk profiles and technical requirements than, say, a regional cultural affairs office. France is managing this through individual ministry plans rather than a one-size-fits-all rollout, a pragmatic approach that increases the odds of long-term success. France is not acting in isolation. It is the largest and most visible entry point in a continent-wide shift that has been building quietly for years. Germany's Schleswig-Holstein is already 80% complete. The German Foreign Ministry has been running Linux on thousands of workstations for over a decade. Italy, Spain, and several Eastern European nations have launched their own digital sovereignty frameworks. And India made headlines last year for a similar migration move. The pattern is unmistakable. Government after government, watching the same geopolitical signals, is reaching the same conclusion. Dependency on a single foreign vendor for critical national infrastructure is a strategic vulnerability. And Linux, after 30 years of being dismissed as a hobbyist operating system, is now the tool that sovereign governments are choosing to fix it. For Microsoft, the revenue implications are significant, but not immediately catastrophic. Government contracts represent a meaningful share of Windows licensing revenue in Europe, but Microsoft has long diversified into cloud, enterprise software, and AI services that do not depend on the OS layer. The real threat is not next quarter's earnings. It is the precedent. If France succeeds, and the precedent becomes undeniable, the conversation in every European government IT meeting will shift from should we consider Linux to when do we start. Microsoft's sovereign cloud and Copilot strategies are designed specifically to prevent that moment. Whether they work will depend on whether AI value proves more compelling than sovereignty concerns. And right now, France has made its position clear. Here is the bottom line. France's decision to migrate 2.5 million government workstations from Windows to Linux is not a protest move or a political stunt. It is a calculated, documented, evidence-backed response to a real problem. A sovereign government's critical infrastructure should not be governed by the laws, pricing decisions, and strategic priorities of a foreign corporation. The Gendarmerie precedent proves large-scale Linux migration in France is not just possible, it has already happened, and it saved tens of millions of euro. The Schleswig-Holstein model proves the financial case is solid. The geopolitical environment provides the urgency, and Dynam is providing the mandate. Microsoft's response, no public statement, a sovereign cloud pitch, and an AI product play tells you exactly how seriously they are taking this. When a tech giant worth trillions stays silent, it is not because they are unconcerned. It is because they have not figured out how to win this argument yet. The question is not whether France will succeed. The question is, who is next?